Okay, we're going to bring this hearing to order. As per the warning, we're here to review a application from Daniel Bonnier. Who here intends to speak tonight?
We all reserve the right to speak if we feel it's necessary, Keith.
Is the Briar Hill Group, you're going to be the spokesman?
We've all signed in, so I think that we'd be able to speak, wouldn't we?
Okay, you can speak. I will say that we are going to stay focused on the matters at hand and not rehash things that have already been discussed. What we're going to be dealing with is how this relates to our zoning bylaws, and we've got to limit any discussion beyond that, or we won't get out of here until this time next week. So we're going to appreciate your cooperation in all of that, and we'll give everybody that wants to speak an opportunity to, but I have to swear you all in as a group. Okay, everybody raise your right hand. Say you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, under the pains of penalties of perjury. Say I do. And everybody here is welcome to have the floor if they want it. I think, Hal, what I'm going to do is start it by turning it over to you, and you can give us a review and introductions. Does anybody feel they need introductions? Do you know the board? This is Merrill Bent.
One new member at the front table, Merrill Bent from the Green Mountain Law Group in Manchester, will represent the town's interests tonight because of some scheduling problems with the town attorney. Merrill has been brought up to speed. She's certainly qualified to move this forward.
Thank you.
So, as Keith described, we're here to discuss one item. This is a variance application was filed by Daniel Bonnier. You know, there was an environmental court hearing. Decision came out in January of this year. The remand from the court was that the DRB should offer the courtesy to Mr. Bonnier to resubmit or to come back before the DRB to discuss his request for a variance. The variance is for the road. We've had extensive discussions, colorful discussions with Daniel about why it would be in his best interest. One thing is to allow us to read his handwriting. It's going to be very difficult for Keith, but maybe Merrill has a magic Rosetta Stone to understand what he's written, but we gave him the courtesy to due notice, posting, emails, letters. First Constable Ricard made personal deliveries of service to both Daniel and to a friend of his. So, and again, it was just a courtesy that he be invited tonight, and at least as of this moment, I don't see Daniel in the audience. So we're going to proceed with a review of that original 2018 variance under the terms of the environmental court's for January decision. Now the DRB has both the state statute and the town's variance, as well as the uses in the rural residential ag district. So I think everything is there for them to evaluate this. I hope you will respect their time and everyone else's interest in staying on track. Otherwise, Keith will probably declare you out of order. And if we do have any legal questions, I know Merrill will assemble them, and we'll probably excuse ourselves from going to executive session and discuss them and then come back. Now, you know that the DRB does not have to make a decision in front of you. They may elect to go into deliberative session, or they may schedule a decision meeting at some point in the future. They have 45 days. ready to go. Meryl, did I forget anything?
Well, I would add that for folks who've been following along, I'm sure that you've all seen the environmental court's decision. And just for clarity, and just so that everybody knows what we're talking about, on the second to last page of that decision, there's a footnote that lays out exactly what criteria we are talking about tonight, and we are limited to that criteria. And I also want to make the point that the court has ruled that we're not going to talk about, we don't need to talk about the original permit application that was denied in 2018. We don't get into the pre-existing non-conforming use issue either. Those are off the table, those have been decided by the court. So we are just here to talk about those criteria listed out in that footnote 3 in the decision, which is the same as the statute in Vermont, 24 VSA 4469, and it is the exact same criteria that's in the bylaws in Article 10, Section 9, just so that there is no absence of doubt about what we're here to talk about.
Can you read that, or, because I don't have a copy yet.
Well, I don't think that's, we'll go through them, but, you know, one by one, I think that's probably the best way to proceed, is to address them one by one. So I don't think that, just given the density of the text, it's not going to be helpful to anybody to hear it read out loud.
I'm not trying to avoid it, but
I do have
if you'll read.
I actually have one spare copy of the statute, if folks want to pass that around.
And people will read both the state statute or the local ordinance, because they're the same, or what rest all criteria. Anything else, Mel? I think
No,
that's
I think-
good to go.
Yep.
Keith, all yours.
Okay. We're going to work on this application for variance. That is dated it's not dated.
Well, it was signed on April, 1st of April, 2018, but I.
Okay, on the back page. we
Processed months later.
can- Right. To process months later.
Well, the
Okay.
previous hearing on it, I believe, was April 25th of the same month.
Right, and we are, got it. We're working on the 5 criteria here based on, and we're gonna work with his description of each criteria one at a time. The unique physical conditions associated with your property which result in unreasonable hardships, non-conforming lot, non-conforming structure, unusual sites, constraints, or etc. I get the luxury of reading this too,
Well,
I
I
guess.
think you can, because this is written, I think this is evidence that you can take under advisement.
Okay,
And I would, perhaps it does make sense to hear anybody else who wants to give evidence as to the particular criteria, since we have the evidence we're gonna have from Mr. Bonnier in writing.
here,
Yes,
and the application.
right.
So does anybody else have evidence that they would like to submit?
Or speak to as to that the very first criteria, which are unique physical circumstances or conditions, including irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of lot size or shape, or exceptional topographical or other physical conditions peculiar to the particular property, which create an unnecessary hardship.
Ray?
This is a point of interest. I've got a question for you. In April 25th, 2018, in the meantime, the DRB voted that the property was a pre-existing non-conforming lot. The lot's not a non-conforming lot. It's a conforming lot for a single-family, 2-bedroom home with 1 bath.
Right, I
So-
think that the pre-existing non-conforming aspect of that lot is the 30-foot right-of-way and
Right.
not 50.
Right, but it doesn't apply to the lot.
Does not, correct.
Okay.
Correct, and the court has ruled that that issue, that non-conforming pre-existing issue is over. Yes.
Ann?
Okay. He has a 30-foot driveway that gets him up to a residence. He doesn't need a 50-foot driveway. He needs a 50-foot driveway for a business, which he's not allowed to have up there, which he's not zoned for. So I'm confused as to why it's a hardship for him. He's able to drive on the 30 feet to get to his home. He has significant right-of-way to get up there and use it as a residence. It shouldn't be a problem for him to have just that 30 feet. It should not be considered a hardship. I mean, 50 feet, if he was going to have a business up there, he would need, but we're not discussing a business. We're discussing his ability to access his property for what it is zoned for. So I don't think that he qualifies for that. I think that is just, I just don't think he qualifies.
So what I'm hearing from you is that what you're saying to the board is that there is no hardship associated with it.
I don't see a hardship at all.
Anybody else? Comments or evidence to put forth? You want to say something, go ahead.
I'm just curious, I'm confused what he's actually building. Like, is it a school or is it a house? Like, what's the goal? What is the end state? Like that the conveyance is being built for? That's what I'm very confused about.
As I understand it, when he submitted this April 1st application, it referenced a school or an instructional facility.
Institute of some sort, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, on this application though, it only states that he's looking for a 500 square foot.
So, as the court found in its findings of fact in the decision that it issued, that when he submitted the April 1st, 2018 letter to the DRB, he described the reason, or he described his goal of operating, quote, a school/training business venture, end quote. So I think that answers that.
So to get it properly zoned, then that's what he needs, the 50-foot right
That's
away
why he's
for.
seeking a variance.
Roger that. Thank you.
May I ask that anyone that's submitting commentary tell me their full names for the sake of the minutes as you speak?
Okay, you got Ray.
I've got Ray,
And
I got
Ann
Ann.
Attica.
Michael, is that right?
Correct.
What's your last name, Michael?
Honor.
Thank you.
Ann?
So if his right of way is significant for a business up there that he already has, where do the permits come into play? Like where does any permitting, I mean, are you deciding tonight that he is going to be allowed to have a business on the basis of how you decide on the variance?
They're just deciding whether he's entitled to a variance under the bylaws and the statute tonight.
Okay, because
Notwithstanding any other permitting requirements that might be out there, this is the sole issue before the DRB.
But we're talking about the driveway, is that correct?
Correct.
Are we, because it was my understanding that the judge said that the driveway, he couldn't bring the driveway up again because it was already denied in January on his special permit. That was the issue. It was Eric Mack denied his first permit in January based on his driveway being a 30-foot right-of-way. And then he came back in April after his 15-day appeal period had lapsed and never appealed that decision of Eric Mack, so he couldn't go back and do anything with the driveway. So my opinion tonight is that the driveway is gone anyway. So I don't even know why we're sitting here talking about it, because he's not allowed any issue with that driveway has already been decided because he didn't appeal it in the first place.
And that may be what the result here is, but the reason we're
Okay.
talking about it is because of what the substance of his variance application says. So we're
Oh,
discussing
okay.
the substance
Okay,
of each of the criteria.
okay.
I got one more questions about the roadway that's out there. I haven't personally seen the property. Is there a reason that he can't be expanded to a 50-foot right-of-way? Like, does the terrain not allow for that, or?
No, it's a right of way and he's landlocked between me and the Hewletts. He doesn't own it.
No, so it's like a deeded
It's a
right-of-way?
deeded right of way.
Okay.
Crosses adjoining properties to access his parcel.
So just to keep us focused, I think it would be good just to make sure that our comments at this point are limited to that first criteria. And if nobody else has any comments on that criteria, then we can move on to the second criteria. Sorry.
Nope.
That is also what we were remanded to us
Correct.
by the environmental court, this same problem that we're discussing here. Reason that it was remanded, well, the reason being it was remanded to us is what allows us to visit it tonight. That is my understanding.
Yes.
And that is why we are allowed to use, by state statute, the old application as opposed to we did not receive a new one.
Yes. Keith, if you're the one who's asked to read the handwritten response to number 2, you'll see why I requested that Mr. Bonnier respond with an application to the 5 criteria that we could read. There are several words that I can't decipher.
So, do you want to read the criteria right out of the statutory language, and you can just go ahead and read criteria 2?
John usually does that.
We do that. It is identical in the
It is
bylaws.
identical.
Okay,
Great.
I'm gonna go with what I know here and stick to the town bylaws.
Great.
Okay. The second criteria here, that as a result of such physical problems, there is no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of these unified bylaws, and that the authorization of a variance is therefore necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property. Anyone need that and want that again, or?
Do that again?
You got it. That as a result of such physical problems, there is no possibility that the property could be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of these unified bylaws, and that the authorization of a variance is therefore necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property.
And I object to that again, because he is able to use the property for a residence with a 30-foot driveway. There is no reason in the world that he has to have a 50-foot driveway for his residence up there. And my understanding with the statutes is that if he doesn't qualify for one, he doesn't qualify, period, for the variance. So I am just, again, I'm stressing that he can use his property all he wants with his friends and family to go out and enjoy his home, and there's, you know, that's wonderful. But he doesn't need a 50-foot right-of-way to do that.
Can you make,
Yes.
go ahead then.
Do you mind if I read it?
No?
No reasonable use can be made of my property for 2 specific and very critical reasons. There is no further property to develop in the current 30 by 267 portion. 2, without this variable, The ability to access and utilize my property is not possible because the pre-existing nonconformity issue.
Whatever that means.
Well, it's going back to the same,
Got all kinds of hands. Michelle Tillender?
Hi, Michelle Tamander. I would agree with Ann. He has a 30-foot driveway. He's able to get to a residence. I see no reason not to call that reasonable use. Having a residence on that property, on that 30 acres surrounded by existing homes is reasonable use. 30-foot driveway is the only thing that should be needed.
Ashley Waite?
Yes, I think it's very important to point out that a resident is only one use in that zone. There's 21, 22 uses in that zone. It doesn't have to be a resident. And it's very important to point that factor out.
Haley Norman, doesn't a variance require approval of the abutters?
Notice to the letters, but
You're guaranteed that you have to be notified. You're given party status in any deliberations or anything, but you're not guaranteed that you have to approve of it. You get to voice an opinion on it, but it doesn't, may or may not go in your favor, so.
I have a question, Robert Felder. I'm an abutter. And the first time, I did not get a notice. Does that have any effect on this hearing?
no.
Not at this,
That was the, what, before the environmental court decision?
Yep.
Yeah, that's, we're in the future now, we're in the present now. And you're here.
So I don't think it matters if there's 20 uses for that property. Reasonable use is not the issue tonight. The issue is his driveway of 30 feet. So he can use his driveway to get up there, and he doesn't need the 50 feet. He can reasonably use the property. That's not a problem. I don't really know if you're going to try to decide use tonight, then that's, yeah, so
But-
we're just arguing and I'm just objecting to the points of what's going on here, so.
but reasonable access,
Yes, and it's.
uses would apply to reasonable access.
Right.
So we're
dealing with the use that he's
that he's,
put forth in the application at this point.
Right.
we move on, John? Quick as you're done writing.
I think you're good. You might have to drive me home. All right, proceed.
You can read.
Okay, I will
Third.
proceed. All right, very good. The third item for us to consider, that such unnecessary hardship has not been created by the appellant. So again, that such unnecessary hardship has not been created by the appellant.
Ann?
It has been created by the appellant because he wants to use the property for something that's not zoned for. So if the 30-foot right-of-way is still fine for what is reasonable on that property, if we're looking at the school and a tactical training facility. So he has caused the hardship himself by wanting to do something on that property that is not zoned at this point or permitted at this point, so.
Duly noted.
Okay.
Go to the fourth?
Seeing nothing further, we'll move to the fourth.
Are you going to read his?
Oh, do we want to read
criteria?
Daniel's?
Can you read?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you want?
He says it is not self-created because when he purchased the property, the 267 by 30-foot driveway was already approved and developed under the current zoning.
Can you
Laws.
speak up?
Do you want me to?
Yes.
It's hard to hear that.
Septic, electric,
Would be helpful.
and I don't know, and all
I can do it.
building permit was additionally approved for the property. He's saying it's not self-created because the lot right away was originally laid out prior to him purchasing it.
Which doesn't address the question.
Okay. Ready? Okay. I'll now read the fourth condition. You guys will like this one. That the variance, if authorized, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located, nor substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, nor be detrimental to the public welfare. I'm going to do that once more. That the variance, if authorized, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located, nor substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, nor be detrimental to the public welfare.
Now, this is, I think, a criteria where you folks as adjacent property owners, your input would be helpful for the record.
I'll begin.
Yeah, okay. let
Robert
Bob go.
Felbo. I would say that I've been here 40 years and enjoying the place immensely, and every once in a while, especially in the fall, I hear the ping, ping, ping of people getting ready for the hunting season. It's all part of the character of this place that I've enjoyed for so long. You know, I've been up here on a couple of weekends where it's entirely different. All right? Counted 24 shots in a row one time when I had nothing else to do. And I think that that is an intrusion on my sense of well-being here. I've been on the property. I have looked at all of his facilities. We were cordially invited to look at the property, and we saw it all. And, you know, when you're firing from the range, you're firing right at my house. Now, hopefully the shells go straight at the berm, but if they don't, they're on their way up over the hill toward my house. So, I find that rather undesirable. Not in keeping with the land I've enjoyed for so many years, and would not like to see it continue.
Good, John. Got some more hands in the air. In the back, in the black top.
Oh, thank you. I'm Amy Murphy. I live on Buttons Falls Road. So I don't live on Briar Hill Road, but I'm close enough that I hear it quite constantly, quite often. And so as the gentleman up here pointed out, it's not as if it's during hunting season, that's a sign of the season. You know, you hear people shooting and stuff like that. This happens sometimes several days in a row. The firing, I can hear it from my house. I also walk. That's how I know all of my wonderful neighbors on Briar Hill Road. I walk my dogs, and I have teenage daughters who run. It is changing the character of our neighborhood. And I have a lot of concerns about our property values. I love my house, I love my property, it's beautiful where I live. But I'm really concerned about the property values, and if I did have to sell, what I would have to disclose to a realtor about a pre-existing situation to a prospective buyer, which would make it difficult to sell my home, my husband and I, if we had to do that. So it's about safety, it's about the quality of the neighborhood, it's about what we all expected when we bought our beautiful homes there. And that's being taken away from us, and I find that really troubling. Thanks.
Okay. This is Norman again.
Ely Norman.
Ely?
And I also am worried about the neighborhood and its effect on my horses and my daughter, who I don't feel comfortable sending down the road on her horse. I have mares that use the upper meadow, and normally, once that is open, they are there for the whole summer, and you hardly see them. And now they come running down the hill, and they spend a good portion of the day around the barn. And that's when those shots are happening repeatedly. Yes, there's a quarry between us and him, but...
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now, actually, is the town tax map and the different parcels and how they lay in accordance to that one. State your name too, please.
Hi, Lucy Norman. I live on Warren Switch Road, about a mile from the property we're discussing. And I too hear the shots. My house, when I'm not there, is often on Airbnb, and people come there particularly for the peace and quiet. And my status with Airbnb relies on getting good reviews from guests who have been there. And if they put down that they have been annoyed or concerned about the shooting that they hear in this gallery, or shooting area, I will lose guests, I will lose income, and I will lose value on my property as well.
Thank you. Ann again?
Okay, I just want to say that it actually, this whole thing, I'm not going to mention anything about what even does up there, but this whole thing puts a hardship on me, my property. I have a horse facility that I haven't had horses in for a couple of years, and I'd really like to get horses back, but I will not do it because I can't ride in the backwoods. There's a range on my property line, right over my property line on his property. And my trails used to go up kind of along there and around in my woods. So I just, the traffic on the road has increased tremendously. And I don't know, again, the value of my property has probably gone down quite a bit. And I can't imagine. My husband, Gary, and I were thinking of building a small house down at the other end of the property. And, I mean, we're not going to do that because we have that there now. So, I mean, again, a residence, you know, living there, reasonable use of that property is absolutely fine. But, I don't know, it's just, it's a use that if you tried, he would have a really hard time zoning it. So dealing with an issue that is him zoning something that he's not going to get the permits for anyway, I don't know. So I just want you to know that it has been a huge hardship on me for the past year. So
you feel it might negatively impact your neighborhood?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's what we needed.
You're gonna read his?
You're gonna read his.
I'm gonna read his.
You're gonna read his.
One more, please.
Oh, Michelle?
Yeah, I live just down the road from him on Warren Switch. My husband and I moved here about 10 years ago. We looked for a place for about 3 years. I mean, really looking through Massachusetts up into New Hampshire, headed west, hit Vermont, came around the valley and said, this is it. I have been very ill. We had hoped to build a small accessory building on the property. And because of his activities, we can't do that. We have decided not to do that. Yes, he has destroyed our neighborhood. Great impact on us. Neighborhood dogs scared to death, running the house. Kids scared to death, running the house. I say that's a big impact on a quiet, rural, residential neighborhood. 1,000 rounds on a day isn't, you know, centering your gun for turkey shoots.
You want to read?
Sure. This request will not alter or impair the essential character of the neighborhood because the approved 267 by 30 driveway I-access of my property will remain in its present state. It has been the same for over 10 plus years through several transfers of ownership.
Okay. Move on to the next one, John.
Does anyone have anything further on that before we move along? Sure.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring these questions up, but they're safety issues. Is gunfighter considered a normal home occupation? If the website for Slate Ridge is now advertising demolitions classes and rumors of C4 purchases, there seem to be considerable questions in regard to safety. I'm not familiar with the size of the berms, and I have not been up there. If there is someone in the audience who has more knowledge about the use of berms and ranges in regard, like a range safety officer that NRA training might provide information that would be valuable. But at this point, I think whether it is appropriate to bring up safety issues in this meeting or not.
Yeah, it is not, because that is beyond the purview of this board. This board has no authority over the safe use of any property in this community.
Where should people bring these questions?
At 250.
Good luck.
To go back to the state with Act 250?
Don't know the answer to that question.
That's where you would start, Dolores, but
Could you speak up, please? It's really hard to hear back here with the door open and
we don't have any decision-making in any of those points that Dolores brought up. Not on the DRB board. She needs to go to the state level, somewhere else besides the Development Review Board. Our only purview on this is to see where it fits into the town zoning bylaws. So.
I guess my question would be, is that a normal use? And that's the end of my questions, thank you.
Is that a normal use?
Yeah, is that a normal use? I think that does fall under your
Guess perhaps.
authority. Thank you.
We'll come up with an answer for that later down the road, but right now we don't have one. Michelle?
I did want to mention I've spoken to two neighbors before I came here. They did ask me to put their 2 cents in. One of the neighbors, John Davis, up on Warren Switch, lives very close to this man, is a Marine, retired, it's a veteran, suffers from PTSD. You can imagine what this does to him. The other neighbors that live around the corner from us, which are very close to us, and he hears the impact all the time. What the heck is his name? I'll come up with it.
Harry.
No, Blue Gray House. Blue Gray House, with new girlfriend.
Carrie.
Anyways, I'll come up with a name. Jean Carey.
No, Gene Saunders.
Jean Saunders.
Friend, Carrie girl.
Okay. I spoke to them today, and he can't be here. He's a little friend. They have 3 children. I think it's a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. The kids are scared to death. They run in the house. They won't go out. I think it was her cousin was shot in Vegas. Her sister was shot in Vegas.
Okay. Last one, John.
All right. That such variance, if authorized, represents the minimum that will afford relief and provide the least modification possible of the bylaws and of the comprehensive plan. So again, that such a variance, if authorized, represents the minimum that will afford relief and provide the least modification possible of the unified bylaws and of the comprehensive plan.
Maybe we should read his first and then see if anybody else has comment.
Got it figured out, James?
I might be off on a couple.
Yeah.
This variance request is the minimum necessary to allow reasonable use of the property because the variance would preserve the existing essential character of the neighborhood. The property is landlocked and any further changes would disrupt the preservation and character of the neighbor's land. Approval would allow my full utilization of my property without excessive disruption and integrity.
Doesn't a comprehensive plan mean that you have a legible one? Just curious. I mean,
I thought it was doing pretty good.
You're killing it, James.
James has got it down, so it's
maybe
legible.
outstanding. If we can go back then to the second thing, where there's some illegibility, I mean, that make it an incomprehensible plan, the whole thing is incomprehensible. Well, that's right to the point, is it not? Like,
Well, the
it's
comprehensive
verbiage.
plan is referring to
The town
The
unified
town plan.
bylaws.
yeah.
So he doesn't have to have a comprehensive plan, it can be gibberish.
Well, I think, what he's done is he's filled out the variance application, so we're taking the answers as they are. So on that final criteria, I think comments and then.
Michelle?
Least possible deviation from the bylaws. The bylaws state that this town is to protect our property rights, our safety and welfare, and preserve the general character of our neighborhood. And that's, I think, 3 of the 5 points. It won't do that if this goes through. That's in violation of the bylaws. This obviously has affected the character of our neighborhood. It obviously will affect our property values. And it certainly has affected our safety.
It asks if it's
Ian had it gonna be in here.
the minimum relief for his property or allowable relief for his property. He doesn't need any relief for his property because he has a 30-foot driveway that allows him to get up there. So it shouldn't, the relief, whether how big or how small the relief is, should not be an issue. So.
Let John catch up here a minute. You're good, Ray, just let John
Thank you,
catch
Chief.
up and then.
Yeah. Okay, proceed.
Okay, he's not entitled to any relief because, number one, he's not landlocked. He has a 30-foot right-of-way, a deeded right-of-way. Landlocked piece of property means you have no access. He has access to a property that's been approved for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath residence. And that is it. And he is not entitled to any relief whatsoever. He has changed the character of our neighborhood, and the only reason that he would need to concern himself with a 50-foot right-of-way would be to run a business, as we've said. And he has been doing that with a 30-foot right-of-way for a couple of years now. He's changed the character of our neighborhood and lowered all our property values. And we've been here 35, 38, 40 years, and this is detrimental to all of us sitting here.
Just to be really clear, the question is whether, the question we're addressing is whether he's entitled under these criteria for a variance from the 50-foot criteria. In other words, can he proceed with the way he, in the manner he seeks to proceed with the driveway that's existing?
Would you repeat that?
We're talking about whether he's entitled to a variance from a bylaw criteria.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that's clear.
And
Well, he doesn't have business use, so he doesn't need the variance. He doesn't, I don't know, I guess I'm confused because I feel as though a variance is supposed to have it's supposed to have some kind of a use with it. And I'm assuming that that's the school and tactical thing going. But he doesn't have that use. So he shouldn't qualify for any variance on his driveway, on top of the fact that the driveway is not an issue anymore. So,
I think Dolores had her hand up.
Can a variance be given on property that is now in violation of, I guess there's a list of things in regard to zoning or
That may be something we have to look into.
And that's the question. You're being asked to give a variance, and can you on property that has an existing violation? That's my question.
Do you want me to answer it?
You know, it's
Duly noted, Dolores, but the way the bylaws are written as a guideline, somebody that has a violation, the town's goal is to bring them into compliance, okay? So in that respect, if somebody was non-compliant right now and they needed a variance, they could apply for one and to get the variance to bring them into compliance. And that's how the town would work with the applicant to get it done. That being said, that with the situation at hand here, that may be different than that normal situation. But normally, yes, you could get a variance on a non-compliant property simply to bring it into compliance, because the town would prefer to work with you and bring you into compliance than to fight with you. So, and
with all of that, none of it really matters because he has to qualify for all 5 things.
correct. Eli, you had?
And how can any of this, I mean, this is an unpermitted use that he's wanting this for. Yes?
so we're just focused on whether he qualifies under the 5 criteria that we're talking about. That's the sole subject of this.
In relation to this unpermitted
Right.
use, is it not?
Right, but we're going through the criteria to hear comments and take evidence on the exact issues that are 1 through 5 here. So just trying to keep us focused so that we don't, if we lose focus and create additional issues, it gets you into the weeds and it creates more problems than, it creates more problems.
And this
to
is
address.
this is far from over, regardless of what we come up with tonight, I'm sure. You know, it's,
I just don't understand how you can decide what kind of driveway he needs if we don't know what he's doing
Yes.
there, or if it's uncommitted, or if it's a business, or, I mean, you can't make a decision.
you should answer that one.
Or if you do, it's kind of.
What is your name, ma'am, for my minutes?
Lucy, Lucy Norman.
Thank you, Lucy.
And now,
Yeah, Bob Fowler again. Again, it's the cart before the horse. What makes it improbable to think straight in this situation is that, you know, you're asking us about something that he's not permitted to use. And it's, so I would think it's a de facto not entitled to any variance until the other issue is settled first.
Folks,
Period.
the DRB has been ordered to address this issue by the court, so we don't have any option but to do what the court says.
All right. So we can recommend that the reason for rejecting it is that it's got the cart before the horse, and it should be defeated because he should have applied for this use first, separate from, and then the variance on the length of the width of the driveway.
Robert, that is inaccurate. We
All right.
only because we do not have the authority to dismiss this on some sort of procedural grounds. If this has been placed in front of us, we need to rule on it on the variances. So what we need from everyone gathered here tonight is to give us the evidence that we need to determine whether or not this alters the essential character of the neighborhood. That will factor into our ruling. We'll then make a ruling and we'll proceed from there. It's small steps.
you should have been a lawyer. That was really good.
Thank you.
What, does anybody have pertinent information dealing with one of these 5 criteria? Because we've heard from many of you already, and we've heard repeated what you've said. We're well aware of your situation. Ashley is still holding his hand up, so I'm going to call on him and Ashley, wait.
Ashley, hold your thought for just one moment. I just need to catch up with my minutes.
But I just want to point out the fact that it needs to be considered. You've got a very difficult decision, and nobody's going to be happy with it. But the point is, you're here to decide if he can have a variance for his lot, regardless of what he wants to do with it. That's not the subject here. It's whether he applies for a variance. If you say no, he doesn't qualify for variance, then you devalue that lot. That's his side of it. I understand all the neighbors and everybody else and their complaints. And I have the same thing at my house. I hear the shooting range up in Frank Ross's gravel pit every weekend, every Friday. And so I do understand what you're talking about.
Okay, Frank, quickly.
I have a technical question, if the board may want to consider this related to this. Is it existing now as a deeded right-of-way that extends to 30 feet? He's appealing, looking for a variance to expand that to 50.
No. He's looking for a variance to make the 30-foot right-of-way allowable for access to that land under the town zoning. Our original decision, and when we discussed that, said it was laid out prior to the approval of the 50-foot requirement in the zoning bylaws, so therefore it made it pre-existing and non-conforming. But then there's been some issues between now and then. So we have been remanded back to us by the environmental court that we have to visit this based on the original application due to the fact that we did not receive a new one, which the applicant was entitled to. He was entitled under the environmental court's decision to submit a new application, which we didn't see, and we've had little cooperation from him whatsoever. So we're still holding our hearing, we're still gonna gather evidence. My assumption, and my board members can back me up, is that we will go into a deliberative session to discuss this, and try to hash it out and write up some kind of a written decision along with Merrill's help. And, you know, and we have a time limit that has to be done under, and then you people will be notified. The applicant will be notified, the environmental court will be notified, we'll see where it leads, but it's far from over. It's sometimes I think we're just kicking the can down the road, but that's the due diligence we have to do to try to get resolution. So, real quick, Ray.
Final remark, according to the bylaws, a standalone variance can't be granted without an appeal.
Michelle?
Actually, if you want to go back to number 4, certainly what he's doing there impairs the appropriate use and development of adjacent properties. Mr. Falvo's ability to go and enjoy his camp that's been there for how long, 40 years? And the Hackers' ability to continue to run their horse training facility, that barn's empty because of this. And how long have you been there? 20 years.
Okay, we're well aware of it. Amy, you had,
I just wanted to go back to the original point that it alters the character of the neighborhood, no doubt. And it will
Good.
change everything for all of us.
so we're,
It has. Thank you.
so we've re-emphasized all of that, and we're, does any,
I just wanted to add some numbers to my comment before. I've had, since September of 2017 until today, I've had 47 guests who stay usually the weekend, sometimes a week or 2 weeks, and one couple stayed 3 months. And if this continues, that use of my property will not be able to continue.
How many of those 47 have complained about this issue?
We've had several people complain about noise. Now, I don't know, they didn't say specifically what kind of noise, but.
all right, because we're going to close the evidence part of this hearing and move on. And I don't know what the board's pleasure is.
Keith, I'd like to make this decision in an open meeting so that everyone can hear our deliberation.
Do you feel we have enough to finalize it now?
The language will take a little work, but I feel we have all the information we need.
I think we should go into a short deliberative session. Or executive session. That's what I think. I think we can still come up with some verbiage this evening, if everyone's in favor of that, but I think we should discuss this privately.
Is there a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second? Okay, motion by Gary, second by James, to go into deliberative session. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried.